Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
What happens when a country loses trade worth $2.8 billion? This is the story of the United States. This huge amount of money did not disappear. It went to America's northern neighbor, Canada. How could such a big change happen so fast? For a long time, Mexico was the top partner for the United States in agriculture. This means Mexico sold many of its farm products, like fruits and vegetables, to America. Foods like bananas, avocados, and tomatoes from Mexico were very common in U.S. supermarkets. People liked them because the quality was great and the price was good. This partnership was important for both countries. But recently, the situation changed completely. Mexico, the close partner, suddenly turned its back on the U.S. This book uses the tomato trade to explain this big shift. Tomatoes are a very large business between the two countries. What happened with tomatoes is a symbol of a much larger change in power in North America. It seems the United States is slowly losing its important position in its own backyard. This analysis will explore the reasons behind this surprising event. We will try to understand why Mexico decided to stop its long and friendly trade relationship with the U.S. We will also look at what this means for America's future. If this trend continues with other major products like corn, wheat, and beef, what will be the result for the U.S. economy? This is a serious question for farmers and officials in the U.S. 2. A new rule for tomatoes. For many years, a special agreement existed between the United States and Mexico. This agreement was very important for the tomato trade. It started in 2019. The rule was simple. Mexican farmers could sell their tomatoes in the U.S. without paying a tax. This helped keep prices stable. It was like a peace treaty for agriculture. American supermarkets always had fresh tomatoes for their customers. Mexican farmers had a large market for their products. The system worked well. Then, in July 2025, the situation changed. The U.S. government made a surprise announcement. It decided to withdraw from the agreement. Immediately, the U.S. put a new 17% tax or tariff on all fresh tomatoes from Mexico. This new rule started on July 14, 2025. The U.S. government gave an official reason for the new tariff. They said it was necessary to protect American farmers. Farmers in states like Florida and Arizona had problems for a long time. They could not compete with the low prices of Mexican tomatoes. The U.S. government called this an unfair trade practice. The tariff was to help American farmers sell their products at a fair price. A 17% tax is not a very large number in international trade. So why did it have such a big impact? The reason is that this was not just about money. It was about trust. The U.S. and Mexico were close neighbors and partners for many years. When a country suddenly breaks an agreement, it sends a strong message. The message is, we can change the rules at any time. This action damaged the relationship between the two nations. In modern business, stability is very important. It can be more valuable than profit. Companies need to know the rules will not change suddenly. The new tariff destroyed this stability. For farmers in Mexico, the tax was a clear reminder. It meant their business was not safe. A simple signature in Washington could change everything. This feeling of uncertainty was the real damage. The trust between the two countries was shaken. 3. Mexico says goodbye. After the United States announced the new 17% tax, everyone waited for Mexico's response. People expected Mexico to argue or try to negotiate. They thought there would be many long meetings to discuss the problem. In the past, Mexico often tried to find a compromise with its large neighbor. But this time was very different. Mexico's reaction surprised everyone. There were no angry letters sent to Washington. There were no requests for new talks. Instead, the country was quiet. This silence was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign that a new plan was in action. Behind the scenes, Mexican export associations and government officials were busy. They activated a plan that was secretly prepared. They decided they could no longer depend on a partner that changed the rules without warning. The leader of a large group of tomato farmers said, "We no longer want to build our house on land that can break." They needed a partner they could trust for the future. The plan was simple but very powerful. For decades, trucks carried millions of tomatoes across the border into Texas and Arizona. These were the most important trade routes. But now Mexico stopped using them. Instead, they opened new refrigerated train lines. These special trains kept the tomatoes cool and fresh during the long trip north. These new trains completely bypassed the United States. They traveled from the agricultural regions of Mexico directly to distribution centers in Canada. This meant no U.S. border inspections, no long waits, and no 17% tax. It was a quiet goodbye, but the message was very clear. Every train that rolled past the U.S. border was a symbol of a broken friendship. Mexico was moving on and building a new, more reliable partnership with Canada. 4. Canada says hello. Before the new American tariff, Canada was a very small customer for Mexican tomatoes. It bought less than 1% of all the tomatoes Mexico sold to other countries. The trade between Mexico and Canada was not very important. But when the United States decided to add a new tax, everything changed very quickly. Canada saw a big opportunity and opened its doors. Canada did not make a lot of noise. It acted quietly. Big Canadian supermarket companies like Loblaw and Metro started to talk with Mexican farmers. They made new business deals to buy the fresh red tomatoes. These Canadian companies offered something very important: a stable and friendly market. Mexico's farmers were looking for a new, reliable partner after their problems with the U.S. Canada was ready to be that partner. To make this new partnership work, they needed new trade routes. In the past, many trucks with Mexican tomatoes traveled through the United States to reach Canada. This was now a problem because of the American tax and long waits at the border. So they created a new plan. They started to use special refrigerated trains. These trains did not stop in the United States. They traveled directly from the farms in Mexico to big cities in Canada. They also used large ships to send tomatoes from Mexican ports to Canadian ports like Halifax and Vancouver. These new routes were faster, cheaper, and more reliable. For Canada, this change was a huge success. Canadian supermarkets were now full of good quality tomatoes. The price for these tomatoes was also lower for people in Canada. The country did not have to fight for this new business. It became a winner by just being a good partner. By simply opening its doors, Canada gained a new trade business worth $2.8 billion. It showed that trust and stability are very important in business between countries. While the U.S. created a problem with its neighbor, Canada built a new, strong friendship. 5. High prices in the U.S. The new tax on Mexican tomatoes did not hurt the people who made the rule. Instead, it hurt normal American shoppers and small businesses. In their daily lives, they felt the biggest problems. People started asking a simple question: why is food getting so expensive? After the government started the new 17% tax, the price of tomatoes in U.S. supermarkets went up very quickly. In just 3 weeks, prices increased by almost 25%. Suddenly, a food that was in every kitchen became a luxury. For many families, especially those with low incomes, this was a serious problem. An older woman said she used to buy tomatoes every week. Now, she had to think carefully before buying them because they cost so much more. A simple meal became a difficult financial choice. Small businesses also struggled. Many local restaurants need tomatoes for their most popular foods, like pasta sauce and salads. A restaurant owner in California, Teresa Rezo, said she had to make her food more expensive. This meant fewer customers came to her restaurant. Other small pizza shop owners decided not to raise their prices. Instead, they made less money. They hoped the problem would go away quickly, but it was hard for their businesses to survive. While American stores had these problems, the situation in Canada was completely different. In the U.S., some supermarket shelves were empty. The tomatoes that were available were expensive. But in Canadian supermarkets, there were many fresh tomatoes from Mexico, and the price was lower. Canadian shoppers could buy good quality tomatoes for a fair price. The U.S. government said the tax was to protect American farmers. The government wanted to help farmers in states like Florida and Arizona. But the plan created new problems. The farmers had some protection from the tax, but regular people had no protection from the high prices. It was the American consumers and small business owners who paid the final cost. 6. The trade map changes. For many years, trade in North America followed one main path. Almost all goods from Mexico to Canada passed through the United States. The U.S. was like a bridge connecting the two countries. Every truck and train carrying products like avocados or electronics had to cross U.S. land. This made the United States the center of all trade on the continent. This was the normal way of doing business for a very long time. Now that is starting to change. The tomato problem was the beginning of a big shift. Mexico looked for a new, more reliable partner, and it found one in Canada. They are building a new partnership. This creates a new trade route that bypasses the U.S. completely. This is a very important change. It shows that the old trade map, with the U.S. at the center, is not the only way. The new relationship is redrawing the trade map of the continent. It is not just an idea, it is really happening. Mexico and Canada are using new train lines and ship routes. These routes connect them directly. They do not need to pass through the U.S. customs or use U.S. roads. This makes trade between them faster, cheaper, and more stable. They do not have to worry about sudden changes in U.S. rules. This new path is not just for tomatoes. Other important products could soon follow. Mexico also sells a lot of avocados, berries, and electronics to the U.S. Now, these industries see that there is another option. They can sell their goods directly to Canada. This is a huge change for North America. A new map of trade is being created. On this new map, a strong line connects Mexico and Canada, showing that power on the continent is shifting. 7. Who wins, who loses? Let's look at the results of the new tomato rule. Who wins and who loses in this trade story? The biggest losers are American consumers. When the 17% tax started, prices for tomatoes in U.S. supermarkets went up quickly. For families with low incomes, this was a big problem. A simple food became expensive. Small restaurants that use many tomatoes also had trouble. Some owners worried they would go out of business. The government wanted to protect U.S. farmers, but the new rule hurt normal people who just wanted to buy groceries. While U.S. store shelves were sometimes empty, Canadian stores were full. Canada is the clear winner. Before the tariff, Canada was a very small customer for Mexican tomatoes. It bought less than 1%. But when the U.S. closed its door, Canada opened its doors. Major Canadian supermarkets made new deals. They offered a stable market with no tariffs. Canada got a $2.8 billion trade business almost overnight. They did not need to fight or argue. They won because they were a quiet and reliable partner. For Canadian shoppers, prices for fresh tomatoes were low. Mexico's situation is more complex. It lost its most important customer, the United States. This was a big economic shock. However, Mexico gained something important: independence. It learned that depending on one country was risky. By building a new trade route with Canada, Mexico found a more stable partner. It proved it could change its plans quickly and find new friends. Mexico lost a big market, but it gained more control over its future. The story of the tomatoes teaches a lesson. A big and powerful trade partner is not always the best partner. The U.S. decision showed that the rules could change at any time. This broke the trust between the two countries. In the end, stability and respect became more valuable than market size. 8. A lesson about trust. A single tomato can tell a very big story. A small decision about one fruit caused a major shift in trade across a whole continent. The story of the tomato is not just about business. It is a lesson about trust, stability, and respect between countries. A simple tax did not just change prices. It changed relationships that took many years to build. The most important part of this story is trust. For a long time, an agreement between the U.S. and Mexico kept the tomato trade working well. This was good for everyone. But when the U.S. suddenly ended this agreement, it broke more than a rule. It broke the trust between the two nations. In international trade, partners need to feel secure. They need to believe that the rules of the game will stay the same. Mexico decided it needed a partner that was more reliable. This is why Canada became the winner. Canada did not make loud promises. It was quiet and stable. It offered Mexico a simple deal with no surprise taxes and no political problems. Mexico chose this stability. It shows that being a trustworthy partner can be more powerful than being the biggest customer. Canada gained a huge amount of trade by simply being a good neighbor. This story makes people ask questions about the future. Mexico was a very close partner to the U.S. for a long time. If Mexico can leave, maybe other countries will also think about finding new partners. If countries in Asia or Europe worry that the U.S. might suddenly change the rules, they might also start looking for more stable friends to trade with. So, was the new tomato tax a smart move to protect American farmers? Or was it a big mistake that pushed a valuable partner away and gave a competitor an amazing opportunity? Which country do you think will be the next to change its main trading partner, and why?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.